Bro, I'm invested in that Greenland problem. As I always say, man, Trump does some very good stuff. I'm glad that you guys have him, and that's the ability to have a good president. That's not not the ability. Sorry, sometimes I use words that don't even make sense. Like comment and subscribe, turn on notification, hit the bell, and do all that kind of stuff. And if not, then nah. Sometimes I mix up words. I didn't not want to say ability. I wanted to say, yeah, I don't even know, man. Yeah, lost it again. Fill in the blanks for me, whatever you want. But like, we jealous that you have that kind of guy that does things like he's doing some good stuff, and then he turns around and he does some brain rot stuff, like some absolute complete dog shit. And the national security excuse for China and Russia is not flying anymore. It's just not.
And delegation, congressional delegation, I beg your pardon.
Troops and vessels from Europe, NATO arrive in Greenland. Let's see. I guess they're preparing themselves for any possible scenario, right? Right. Let's go.
And now a congressional delegation, I beg your pardon, is in Denmark, most of them Democrats who have travelled to Copenhagen to counter Donald Trump's threats. In the last few minutes, we've had these pictures in. This is the group arriving at the Danish Parliament for a meeting with lawmakers. The Danish Foreign Minister, you might recall, was in Washington on Wednesday for a meeting at the White House, which was not especially productive. And since then, a limited contingent of European troops have begun arriving in Greenland to bolster security. Our Europe editor Katja Adler is in Nuuk and sent this report.
So what you can see over there is a Danish naval vessel. It regularly patrols Greenland. The coast here is fundamental to defence. What they're looking out for is suspicious activity over or underwater.
Yeah, but I'm starting to doubt Trump. Like, I don't think he's gonna do it. I mean, like, he thought he had a big ego, the God complex that was building up because of Maduro. But I'm not quite sure that he's actually gonna do it. I don't think so. And if I'm wrong again, like it's only for entertaining purposes, not educational or whatsoever. I'm not giving out tips and stuffs and whatever. So
So
we're good.
ships, Donald Trump has spoken of Chinese or Russian ones, you don't see them here. Or under the water,
So,
submarines, like Russian submarines, for example.
yeah, definitely.
But
Like
apart
hundred
from them,
thousand
what
of
you
them.
have is the arrival now of troops and vessels from other European NATO allies, including the UK, Germany, and France. Now, they say they're coming here as part of a regular exercise, but the speed at which they've arrived absolutely coincides with Donald Trump's loud insistence that he wants Greenland.
I mean, like you lay out the plan. I mean, like that's one of the stupidest things. Why would you reveal the plan to your enemy? And like in that case, Denmark is the enemy. Why would you lay it out? Because that's not actually the plan. It's not. It's a distraction for something else.
And for the United
Very often, it's a distraction. And of course, you're not going to see Chinese submarines or like boats.
States, and he hasn't ruled out taking it by force. Denmark is
That was his
extremely
whole
relieved
threat,
that its
woman.
European allies in NATO are supporting it over Greenland. The hope is that
Should
all
be.
of their presence here will make it a lot more awkward for Donald Trump to take this island by force, if that's what he chooses to do, though
He
it would be
won't.
hard to stop him.
Katja Adler there in Greenland. Thomas Carruthers is the director of the Democracy, Conflict and Governance Programme at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Earlier, I spoke with him and I asked him whether anyone has influence over how President Trump proceeds on the issue of acquiring Greenland.
I'm sorry
This
for
is
yawning all the
a
time.
president who makes
He
his
will
own
not
foreign
do it.
policy. He said
And
recently,
prove me
towards the end
wrong.
of the year, no one can stop.
I must say, please don't prove me wrong on that topic. I would love to be right. Just because like nobody's getting hurt. But if I'm wrong, man, I'll address it. But until then, I'm staying course.
He feels unchecked, he feels unbounded, and thus Greenland surged onto his agenda in recent times, but it's an old obsession of his. In his first term, he was talking about Greenland. At the time, his advisors kind of poo-pooed it and just tried to call his attention to other issues. He's come back to it. He's serious about it. And therefore, the unpredictability here, and I would say the danger, remains high.
Yeah, I mean, that might shift, of course, after the midterms in November, but November is a long way away if you're Denmark. Can you see a scenario where US troops and European troops might come face to face?
No, right now I cannot see that. I think that Donald Trump has not really thought clearly through
Me neither.
what that would really look like, what its implications would be for U.S. security. And
what I wanted to say in the beginning is like, yeah, he built up a God complex with Maduro, and he was thinking he could pull anything off. Like, he pulled back on Iran. Maybe there's the bigger picture that we're clearly not seeing. So, what is the plan here? Why would you reveal the plan to your enemy? I don't think he will not invade at all. Like, shift the forces there, so they're missing in Europe, right?
How it would present to the world.
So shifting so you can distract them.
By gesture, by instinct, by impulse. You know, the meeting between the Danish foreign minister and Greenland's leading diplomat with Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio kind of represented the meeting of the Danish and visitor from Greenland with the id and the super ego of Donald Trump's foreign policy. The id in the form of the Vice President Vance, who represents the impulsive America first, a very nationalistic foreign policy, and Rubio, somewhat more sober diplomat, trying to find a solution. And so Vance had pushed to be in that meeting. So in a sense, we saw both Donald Trump's ego and super ego there in the room fighting for control over U.S. policy.
Thomas Carruthers there from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Well, as I mentioned, the group of lawmakers from the US Congress are now in Copenhagen. In the last few minutes, we've been hearing from the Democratic Senator Peter Welch. He is part of that delegation, and he's been speaking about his support for Danish sovereignty over Greenland.
We're reinforcing our support, complete support for the sovereignty and right of self-determination of Greenland. We're here to reassert our appreciation for the role Denmark plays in our national security. We want to stand up and make a stronger, not a weaker NATO. So this is just an expression by a bipartisan group of members of Congress that we appreciate Denmark.
He won't do it. That's the only thing I got to say. Let's see where that video
cooperative relationship.
But if the president is set on buying or occupying Greenland, what can you do?
Well, part of what we're doing is showing there's a lot of America that doesn't agree with that. Also, we're an independent branch of government, so we can take actions on our own. And we've got to get our colleagues in Congress to be reminded of how tremendous our relationship is with Denmark.
Good luck.
Yeah, he won't do it, boys. Like, there's a whole lot different plan, like that we're clearly not seeing. Trump's moral, I don't need to steal it. Yeah, I mean, like, it could be. Greenland doesn't want to be Orange Land. I respect that. It's hard to believe that less than a year ago, into Trump's second term, countries that are historically allied with the US are having to send troops to help defend the country, which is an ally to the US from the US. It's absolutely brain rot. But that's the time we live in. We gotta see where that leads us. I always like to update you guys. That's it from me.